Welcome to episode 19 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. On Stageworthy, I interview people who make theater, actors, directors, playwrights, and more, and talk to them about everything from why they chose the theater to their work process and anything in between. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. Guys, I'm trying not to freak out, but my solo show, The Commandment, starts rehearsals next week. The Commandment is going to premiere at the Hamilton Fringe Festival in Hamilton, Ontario in July. And if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you'll be hearing a lot about that as the summer goes on. This is my first solo play, so it's a bit frightening, but you know, the good kind, not the bad kind. This episode is Jason Maghanoy and Daniel Pagett. Jason's play Hangman plays this month at Toronto Storefront Theatre. Hangman follows the story of a man condemned to die for crimes of unspeakable savagery and a man hell-bent on justice. Hangman is a western with no moral compass and no easy answers, and it opens May 13th and runs till May 29th. Again, that's at Toronto's Storefront Theatre. Can you guys tell me about Hangman?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
All right. So please do so. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know.
No,
right? We just jump right in
I'm
there.
just like going at it because. No, listen.
Right? You're in the hot seat now.
The thing is, the one thing I find is that I don't want you to, and now giving it away, I don't like to give you the opportunity to get your "oh, I'm being interviewed" hat on because I want you to.
Yeah.
Be unguarded. Well, Dan's not going to have fun with that. The wine will help with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hopefully, the tea will get you jazzed up so you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Hangman.
Yeah.
Tell me about what that is.
Well, Jason approached me with the script almost like a year ago now. Like it was a while ago. And he was just sort of like, hey, I like your work. Here's the script that I have. Just check it out. Like it was very just sort of like, hey, like, do you want to read this script? And so I read it, and I really liked it. And right around the time that I had finished reading it, the Storefront was looking for projects, and so I just sort of tossed it at them. I just sort of was like, hey, like it was like a really last minute application. I was just sort of like, read the script and picture it with me directing it. And does that sound like something that you guys want? But it's a beautiful play. It's highly poetic. It is I think, and Jason and I actually haven't talked about this. I think.
Oh, this is going to be great then.
Yeah, I know, right? I think it's sort of about outsider culture. Like it's very much about how we will treat people as though they are outsiders and then blame them for acting like outsiders, essentially. And it's dealt with in a very harsh, very brutal way. And that's sort of what drew me to it in the first place, was that it's poetic but still very honest, if that makes any sense. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about the play that you wrote?
Yeah, it's funny because what inspired it was there was this town in Pennsylvania where there's a coal fire that's been burning underneath the town since the 60s. So basically, it's like I think the town is called Centralia, Pennsylvania, or something, and it's just basically it's a never-ending fire. So that image was like, well, I loved that idea. I loved the idea of sort of this coal fire just burning forever, and I just loved. And then basically, it was like the town gets condemned, and then like everyone has to leave except for these three people who just stay, and they just want to live there still. And I was like, man, who are those guys? Who are those three dudes?
It's like, nope, stand.
Yeah, and why? What is it about? So what is it about for me? So that was one image that started it, and the next image was this idea of sort of community. This idea of like, how do you build a community? What does it mean to build a community? What does it mean for a community to change? and the violence associated with that. And it was funny because I remember when I started developing the play, I started developing at the Tarragon. I was in the playwrights unit. And when I first started writing the play there, I was like, oh man, Tarragon will never do this play. They're never going to do this play, so maybe I should just do a play they will do. So I was like, taking out my dinner party plays and taking out my midlife crisis play as I was having one.
Which are all great, Tarragon.
They're great, and I love them.
Wonderful.
They're fantastic. And then my agent was like, no, just like write the play you want to write and be there because it's a very freeing environment. You have access to just be free. So I just had a chance to sort of write, and it's so true. Like in terms of just the world and the poetry and seeing what Danny's doing with it, it's just like, man, like there's just so it seems so big. It just seems really big, this place, and then sort of seeing how they're engaging it and they're making it even bigger for me. And I'm like, that's incredibly exciting as a playwright to see that.
Could I ask you about that feeling that you had when you were at the playwright unit, that you felt like you couldn't write the thing that you wanted? Just out of curiosity, what was it that was making you feel that way? Was it, do you think it was something you were doing to yourself that you thought Tarragon only does this sort of thing, or did you think you had to write for Tarragon, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I mean, I was in the unit in their like 2011-12 season, right? So I was like, I wanted to be done there. I wanted to be produced there. So it's like when I was invited to the unit, when I was invited to the unit, I was so thrilled. And I thought, man, like this is my shot. To do that.
You're like Hamilton.
Yeah. I was at Hamilton.
This is your shot. Yeah.
But then at the same time, it was like, and then it was sort of like I thought I had an idea of what they were interested in, so I felt I had to do that, even though that wasn't the point of being in that. So it was like, and at the end, it was sort of like, in the end, what happened over the course of the writing process for the play, it's sort of like, Tarragon didn't do it; they passed on the show, but just what I ended up with after that process was great because I just sort of let go of that expectation of trying to write my way into a season or change my voice or change who I was to try to get onto a season. And that felt, and that feeling that felt really good, and that actually helped strengthen this play. Yeah,
it's great. I always find for like keeping in mind the process is like sometimes so difficult because you often think, oh, the end result and the end result, Tarragon doing the show, but the process gets you an excellent play, right? I've talked with Dan a little bit previously with Sex T-Rex about his theater background a little bit. We can get a little bit more because I was in a big room full of people. So I'd like to start with you, Jason. What's your theater background? What drew you to theater?
It's funny because like I wrote plays. I just wrote stuff. I was a writer, I would say. I wrote various words, words and sentences, and then I went to school for playwriting. I went to National Theatre School, and then I came to Toronto, and then just started basically doing the festival route and getting my work done. And I've had a lot of great opportunities through the established theaters in the city, and then I just sort of. That's like the vaguest thing. I literally write plays.
No, we're good.
Okay, cool.
We're good. Oh, panic. Okay. That fear of time. Anyway, wearing a Doctor Who shirt, talking about a time warp. Anyway.
So I just worked in the theater as a playwright, just doing the festival circuit, and I've been in residence at Cahoots Theatre Company and Passe Muraille and Young People's Theatre, and it's working through the establishment.
So you went to National Theatre School. Where were you before that? Were you in Montreal?
I was in Montreal.
Yeah?
So I went to McGill, and I did English Lit and Poli-Sci at McGill, and then when I remember, and I always love telling this anecdote because it's the greatest anecdote of my life. I remember I was when I applied to National Theatre School. I applied, and then I was like wondering if I was going to get in. It was something I was trying to do. I also wanted to graduate and travel and go somewhere else. And then I remember I got home from I was out one day and I went and I checked my messages. And the first message was Anne Lambert, who ran the playwriting program at NTS, and she was like, "Hello, Jason. Would love for you to come in for an interview for a play."
Is she British?
No, she's not. I just added that because it's National Theatre. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to go in. And I was like, oh boys. I was with my roommates, and I was like, going, guys, man, I'm blowing up, I'm huge. And the next call was Diego Matamoros. And he was like, "Hello, Jason. I'm calling from a company called Soul Pepper. We're new and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh my god, yeah!" Because I had sent them a play. I had sent them a play through one of my dramateurs at NTS, Claudia Day, who was working with I think Martha Burns at the time, and she's a founder there. Right. I get these 2 messages, and I'm like, going, "Oh boys, doesn't matter where I go, I'm blowing up." And it was just ridiculous. And I remember when I did my interview at NTS, I graduated from McGill. And right after I graduated, I had my interview. So I went in my graduation suit. I went to the interview, and the first question they asked me was, "So they're like, so why do you write plays?" And my answer was like, "Because I'm good at it," or something, or like, because I'm good at it, or something like,
can.
yeah, because I said that because I can and I'm good at it. And I remember after I said that, I was like, "Oh my god, Jay, you bombed! You literally, this interview's over. You bombed." And one person looked at me like, "Oh, who is this guy?" And kind of just stopped speaking to me. And then I became friendly, and then I started doing my interview, and I laughed. I was like, "Oh man, I totally got into that school." So So it was just funny. It was I wanted to go, and I ended up going. And then when I came out to Toronto, it was just diving right into the scene here and getting a chance to work here. It's been really great.
Cool. And so, were you somebody who wrote a lot of plays when they were a kid? Were you interested in theater as a kid, or was that more of an adult thing that you
Yeah, it was more of an adult thing. Yeah. More of an adult thing. And even now, it's like, do I even like writing plays? It's like, half the time I'm writing a play and I'm like, damn, it's sunny outside. I should just go out there.
That's great line.
I kind of know what you mean, because I have to admit, I love writing plays.
Yeah.
The first draft. After that,
I
have to fix it.
Yeah.
That's what I hate.
The editing, the work, the actual work.
All the actual work.
That's
the fun stuff.
First draft, you're like, I made this thing.
Look, I did a thing. Great.
Absolutely.
But, after that, you have to make it a thing that people can watch. So, you guys knew each other before, or were you total strangers when you walked up to Dan and gave him
vaguely knew each other, but not much.
Yeah.
Only by reputation, really. We met once.
I
was at the bar.
Yes.
Today I was at the bar that we were at when we met.
Yes.
Where we took it was the hair of the dog.
Yes. Oh man.
On Church, and it was literally I don't even remember what it was.
It was a book launch. And
it was a book.
Yes,
yeah, it was
and Danny performed Kat Sandler's monologue from Help Yourself that night.
Yeah. And then we went to Bear and Dog not Bear and Dog, Hair of the Dog.
Yeah.
And that was the one time that we met, and then
one time.
Then the next time it was hey, let's play.
Yeah, and it's crazy because there's a photo of that night.
Yeah,
and the photo of the night is Danny, Kat Sandler, myself, and Jordan Tannehill. it's the most famous theater photo. We had no idea that we were all gonna blow up the way that we did.
It's like you didn't know then.
I know. I know.
So we're selling autographs of that. We're selling autograph copies.
Crazy! Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Right?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, it's so good.
I forgot that Tannehill was there.
Yeah, Tannehill was there. It was phenomenal. It was just and that was great because that was a great initiative. It was at Buddy's.
It was at Buddy's. It was I can't remember the name of the book was, but it was all Toronto playwrights.
Yeah. You know what? I know the book. I know the book is on the shelf.
You probably have it.
It might be.
It's called Toronto Voices.
Toronto Voices.
It might be on
yes.
the shelf. I know I had it at one point. There was one point where I did a very painful book purge, so it may have been purged.
Oh man,
no, man, no!
You threw away books that had
to get rid of it.
Hard-hitting, riveting content for me and Kat and Jordan and Danny.
No! Hold up! There were a lot of books that I put out on the curb. I just think about it.
Not enough room.
I set the book free.
Someone else is enjoying it somewhere.
I put the book in the laundry room where people pick up books. And somebody
found the book. I'm not making it any better. No better.
I'm waiting for the day that I find that book in like my own laundry room, and it's like my roommate. It's Alec that threw it out or something like that.
The same book.
Phil Rickaby, what the fuck?
That is so fantastic. I love that so much.
This is the most embarrassing moment. Not actually, but close. We talked a little bit about the themes of the play.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the story of the play, or like what is this?
Yeah,
about?
It's interesting. It's a total anti-hero story. Like it's about this guy named Alistair, who he's a serial killer. He's killed a bunch of people, and he's set to hang. And the interesting thing about it is that at the beginning of the play, it's very sort of black and white about who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, and throughout the play, that sort of dissolves a little bit, and that dissolves from the perspective of the audience, but also from the perspective of all of the characters, because there's this whole, and like, you know, Hangman, I'm not spoiling anything. There's this idea of capital punishment, of retribution, and of all this, and it starts to get to a point where characters in the play are saying, well, what am I doing that's different from what this guy did, essentially, to go a little bit off topic with it, when I first read the play, it was during Ferguson. It was during the whole Ferguson shit. Yeah. And then like since then, it's been like Ferguson. It's been Syrian refugees. It's been like there's been a lot of cases where people are making the excuse of authorities have done what they need to do, right? And that is sort of. It's not something that I've really like imposed on the play. It's just something that I've been thinking about while I've been working on the play. Is this idea of, well, they did what they need to do to keep people safe. They did what they need to do, and it's the means justifying the ends sort of ideas that happen when you're saying like, oh well, like I had to do this violent thing because somebody else did a violent thing and I had to stop them, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of the rhetoric that the play descends into. Is do two wrongs make a right? Do my actions counter his actions, or am I just perpetuating this cycle of violence? When in fact, mercy is and mercy is a thing that's talked about a lot in the play as well. Is a thing that is the one thing that nobody ever thinks to use, but the one thing that could end a cycle of violence. Yeah, that's a plot, right? That's right. That's
yes.
No, essentially, it's about this guy who killed a bunch of people in the town, who is hung, and his neck is broken, and he is left onto the gallows to rot. Essentially, nobody knows that he's died. And then there's another criminal that comes along and finds him, and they sort of seek retribution or solace in each other. And yeah, it's a really interesting sort of like twisted Shrek donkey tale, if that makes any sense.
Strangely, yes.
Yeah. I use the term Shrek and donkey a lot in rehearsal.
How do you feel about the use of Shrek and Donkey to describe your play?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible film. It's an incredible film, but also like, yeah, I mean, it's it's great to sort of, and again, it's the creative process, you know, whatever these guys are doing, just keep doing what they're doing, you know.
Are you going to a lot of rehearsals, or are you just going, like, have you been to rehearsals, or are you just waiting
like I
for
said, this is actually, like, kind of the first time that we've talked about it since we started rehearsing.
So this is where
we
you
were
find
supposed
out
to...
what's going on with that play. I think it's a comedy.
That could literally happen. Because it's funny, because I was thinking, like, I find that like, especially if I'm very comfortable with what the play is in terms of the draft.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually really helpful for me not to be there.
Yeah.
I find that like, having some playwright guy sitting in the corner like looking perplexed 24/7, it's not conducive to like a really good process. And at the end, I just like that's the thing. When the thing with Storefront is that like these guys, this community, this great independent theater indie community they've created is driven. It's creative. It's amazing. So like, I don't have to help. Right? I don't have to do anything. These guys are fine. So it's like, if I'm there, I'm just gonna. I feel like me not being there is actually helpful because I would just muck it up.
Right.
Actually, I'm thinking, so many times when you're working on a play, you don't have the ability to contact the playwright.
Right.
And so you have to decide in the room in the rehearsal hall, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Which is kind of one of the great exploration processes, and it's kind of a cheat to be able to go to the playwright and say, so what does it mean?
Totally.
Whereas instead of having the actors find their meaning.
Absolutely. Like, the past 2 plays that I've directed have been by playwrights that I haven't been able to contact. I did a Carol Churchill play, and then I did a Claudia Day play. And Claudia Day came to see the show, but beforehand,
Wow.
And the thing is, I added something
Fantastic.
huge to Trout. Like I added a new character to Trout Stanley. So Claudia came and saw the play, and she came up to the actor Dan Janot, who played my narrator character, and she said, "Oh, hello, surprise human." But she she got it, she understood, and that's sort of like that's sort of my bag with directing is like I want to do a take on the play. Like I don't want to just be like, here is a really formal staged reading of it. Like I don't want to be like, here's exactly what you could just read and imagine, right? And I appreciate the trust that you've given me because I'm doing some weird shit with it with this play.
I love hearing that on the podcast.
You'll be ready to you're ready to put on your that's great face.
I'm not adding any characters this time, but
And it's funny because and for me it's also this thing where it's like, I was an extremely different writer back then.
right.
I'm a very different writer now. So like, I would just sit in that rehearsal room and be like, man, I should rewrite that monologue and rewrite it. But then I'm like, no, but that's the monologue.
Yeah.
If Jay now rewrites it, it'll be like one line and like crappy or something.
What?
It's sort of like there's something about this voice that that is really exciting to me because it's like I'm meeting this dude again for the first time and then seeing these great imaginations and the great casting that Danny's done and the concepts and the vision. It's like, yeah, man, like I'm good with all that. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it just that's a thing that I just really like about directing is challenges and finding a monologue where you're like, if I was in the room with the writer, I would be like, can we change this? Can we change this? The only couple of things that we changed is because I cross-cast one of the characters, and so I was like, hey, Jason, can we change these pronouns? Basically, and he said no.
I was outraged. How dare you? No.
I can tell. I can tell.
Yeah. He hit me in the head with a bottle.
It was a breakaway bottle.
It was.
It's fine.
Oh
Yeah.
my god!
He just
I can't,
keeps them around.
I cannot
It's weird.
wait to see that friggin' chair because it's gonna be
Right? Come
it's gonna
on.
be fucking awesome.
Breakaway chair. No, there's no breakaway chair. It's a surprise. But yeah, a lot of the work that I have done in theater before I started directing was in new works.
Right.
I dramaturged a lot of Kat Sandler's works, and I've worked with a lot of new works. With Circle Snake, I've helped create new works, and the fallback, the easy out is usually this isn't working. Let's just change it. Whereas. And one thing that I've learned that I've taken from this that I've translated to the work that I'm still doing with that is try to make it work for as long as possible, unless you're like, no, something's fundamentally wrong, and sometimes you'll get really interesting decisions out of that, and sometimes you get like really interesting choices, and sometimes you'll get some of the most interesting parts of your play out of challenges. You know, yeah.
Because in a lot of cases you can't change it. Like
Absolutely,
if it's not a new work.
Yeah,
you can't change it.
The first play that I did was the fucking Skriker. It was this Carol Churchill play where like the opening monologue is heard her roast beef eater, daughter could spin, span, spick and span the lowest form of wheat straw into gold. Like that's like what is that? What is that? You know? And we just had to like that, those are the lines. Those are the lines. And so we had to be like, all right, let's make that make sense. We did. But that's the thing is like
phenomenal.
Is like that's like that was the reason that I did that play was because I had seen it like 5 years prior, and I had read it a bunch of times, and so I had analyzed it enough that I was like, I think I know what voice this play has. But that's the thing is like we found, I think, in that play, like we found like this like magic that was like sort of hidden in this play that a lot of people would just gloss over. Every review that I read about Skriker, like previous productions of Skriker, was this opening monologue in gibberish, and everybody talks about it in gibberish. And it's like it's like what we did was we mined it and we made it into a story, and that's an extreme version of that. But like I think that with all plays, it's like give the text a chance. You know, don't blame the text on your inability to seek things out. You know.
Yeah. When you had when you added the character to the play, you added the character to and the playwright came to see it. Yeah. Aside from referring to the surprise human, did they react to that at all? Did they?
Okay. Well, here's the thing: is I wasn't there. I showed up. Like I was working that night, and so I showed up right as she was leaving, as Claudia Day was leaving, and so all I got was like, she seemed to be in a good mood. That's all I knew. What I did was, the thing is, I didn't add any lines. I added in this character, and that character spoke her stage directions, which, if you've ever read Trout Stanley, her stage directions are fucking gold. They're gold. They're so good. And there are jokes that she wrote into that play which are only in stage directions. Like the timing of them and the wording of them, it's like when you're reading it, you're like, oh, I get that joke, but how does that translate to when it's on stage?
Interesting.
And so I was like, I don't want to lose that, and so that's why I kept the stage directions. And so I wasn't really like, what I was doing was not like
lines. You didn't,
exactly. I wasn't taking a square peg and putting it around a hole. I was like, oh, she also wrote these words, and I would like people to see those words, you know.
Because I know that there's been a bunch of instances in the States, and I don't know about here, but where people got the rights to do a show, and then like somebody did Little Shop of Horrors and was like, you know what would be great is if we had some Rocky Horror Picture Show in here as well. It would basically like insert stuff that was never there into this play. And of course the rights holders would go no and take away the rights to do it. This is obviously not that. I had a concern for a second when you mentioned it. The playwright came to see it and was putting on like a brave face.
Apparently, and this I found out much later is that our producers were contacted by the playwright's agent, who hadn't really talked to the playwright, and so the agent was like, oh, you can't do that. I heard about this. And then the player was like, no, it's fine.
Okay. Cool.
I think that's what happened. If not, I'm sorry, Claudia Day. Please don't sue me anymore than you could already. But what the thing was, it's like what I was putting on stage were the words that she wrote in the script. Yeah. You know, and in no way was I don't think that I was disrespecting her words. I think that I was like, I really like this part. I would like more people to see this part as well. Like putting Rocky Horror Show songs into Little Shop of Horrors is just like, I want that reeks of, like, to me, somebody who is probably producing and in the show.
Possible.
And
Just
it's like,
really likes-
you know what? I really like this song, and I'd love to sing it.
Love it.
I don't know. Whoever did that show,
Wow.
I'm sure it was great.
No, they give a lot of credit. So, probably justified. So.
Yeah.
But, in terms of you, Jason, you were talking earlier about the desire to rewrite something that you wrote years ago. Do you ever revisit, or are you content to just sort of finish something and like once it's done, just leave it and not futz with it?
Well, that's the thing. I've done that before. Like I've rewritten stuff before, and sometimes it's worked out, and other times it literally is like, I think it's sort of like it's a process thing. It's like when I'm writing a play, it's sort of like there's this feeling I get when I don't believe it or I don't like it. It's a feeling I get in my chest or my stomach. You know, it's like it feels weird.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, ooh. And then I remember like one of the plays that I did was called Gas, and it was about the Iraq War. And I remember I saw the production of that. We did it in Banff.
Right.
So when I was in Banff for the Playwrights Colony, I was there for like 10 days. I had like access to all these resources, and I messed the play up. Like I literally was just like, I felt so much pressure to be this really great writer at Banff, and you know, I remember I was sitting at a table and Alistair McLeod was sitting beside me, and I'm like, oh my God, hello, Mr. McLeod. And like I have a British accent, I was like, hello, Mr. McLeod, and you know, oh, I love the chicken fingers, and I was just like, my God. So my play was really messed up after Banff, I felt, because I didn't believe any of it.
Right.
And then I remember like I watched the production of it in Montreal, and there's this one section in the play it killed me every time I watched it, because it felt so fake to me, and I was like, this is I can't deal with this. And the thing is, usually I could go back and just rewrite it, and just for my own sanity, and so while it sits on my computer, being seen by no one, at least I know in my belly that this section is okay, but I needed to see. And then I remember, so after Banff, I felt weird. I saw the production, felt weird, and then when it was going to be produced again in Toronto, I rewrote it.
Right.
And then I felt better about it. And then I think that having that second opportunity to get it produced gave me the option to. Other times, if I go back and I'm revisiting a work, it's because like, you know, the characters are interesting to me, or I want to get a sense of, you know, what would happen to them now with this sort of slightly different lens, and that's it, you know.
For that part that sort of made you feel like it wasn't quite right, how did the performers and the audience feel about it? Do you think that they felt the same way, or was it just something that really
it was fine. Like it actually, it's, you know, that thing, it's like this. It was for me. It was like this. The problem that Game of Thrones is having right now. It's almost like all the dialogue is exposition, but the plot is moving so quickly that it's almost like it's this weird thing where it's like, so it was this entire the play moved. It felt like it was moving, and all of a sudden I had this one giant section where I just wanted to explain my research. These are my research lines.
No, it's all true, guys.
Yeah, it's all. This is all exposition. And it literally was just like, man, like literally the play was moving and then it stopped moving. It's like now this is you trying to, for some reason, you're trying to prove maybe the integrity of the play or the integrity of the research. Justifying it. It's all just exposition. It doesn't, and it's just like everything ground to a halt. Yeah. So it was sort of like, how do I, you know, so I was like, you know, I got that, and the actors are, especially if a great director and great actors, they can bail you out.
Try to make it work.
You know, but in the end it was just. And it was just for me, like I didn't like that part, so I changed it for the next production.
It's funny how research can sometimes not help you, especially when you're so proud of it. You can be like, I'm doing so much research. I have to get this on the stage somehow. Yeah. It's kind of like there's a Canadian novelist who like every novel that I've stopped reading his novels because I'm like, well, half of this book is just you explaining your research.
Footnotes. So,
yeah.
We we just had this podcast come out, how to build a fire, that Brouhaha.
Yeah, I was listening to that. It was good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you. We it was Kat and Tom and I sort of like created the story behind that. Kat wrote it, but we got really heavy into the research of it. My job was for the sci-fi. My job was the sci, and Tom's job was the fi. Basically, and so I was like, oh, like so I got like into this like rabbit hole fracking towns and again like things on fire, and like the fact that like their water lights on fire, and there's YouTube videos of people like opening a tap and like lighting their whole sink on fire because methane comes out with the water essentially. But like I got so heavy into that that I was just like, no, we should just make this about fracking towns. Like instead of this really interesting sci-fi plot that we came up with, let's just like make this about like the fact that isn't that crazy that water lights on fire? And they're like, no, Danny, no, we have characters and we have a plot.
You also can't really get that across so much in audio form.
Exactly.
Like,
it would just be me
just
saying,
going,
oh guys, it's crazy.
The water's on fire.
It's fucking nuts.
That just to talk briefly about that podcast. You don't see a lot of like audio dramas so much anymore.
Yeah,
there are a few that I've heard that are trying to recreate like in a comic way the serial like adventure stories of like the early radio.
Yeah,
it's you almost never hear an audio drama that is a serious story,
right. Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
What was it like? How did that particular project come about?
Well, Koffler approached Kat, and they were like, little secret. Whenever anybody approaches Kat, they approach Kat and Tom and myself. That's what happens.
Do they know that, or
they don't know that.
Yeah.
Well, we like Kat does the writing. She writes, but Tom and I are her story guys. We sort of like make sure that everything works story wise. We tend to the machine, I guess. So Kat got approached by Koffler, and they were like, we really want a podcast that's written by you, and we went into this like insane flurry of like, well, what's popular? Of course, serial is popular, but you know, we can't recreate a super interesting like weird cold case that is happening in the United States, and what we ended up landing on was we were like, well, let's just do what we do really well. Like let's write a play and let's just adapt it for audio. Like let's just do the same thing and we'll serialize it. And like it's sort of the same format that we work in all the time. But we got to do a lot more with it. Tom and I got to world build a lot more. And figure out like what the backstory of everybody is and how this town works originally it was going to be a lot more conceptual. It was going to be all found audio. It was going to be all like picked up from a microphone that's bugging this person's house, or picked up from this person's iPhone, or blah blah blah. And then and eventually we were just like, we want to tell this story in the cleanest way possible. And modern audiences, because the audiobook is or because the radio play is not something that people are used to, breaking the form of it right now is not really something that we should be doing. So so we were like, well, let's just do it like classic radio play style, and we'll do like the originality of it will come through in our plot and our characters and our actors and in our concept. And I think that works. I hope it did.
Well, it's kind of like you've got to reintroduce people to this style before you can break it again.
Absolutely, yeah. Hopefully that'll be moving forward. We'll see.
Audio is a kind of a weird medium to work in now.
Is it?
Now I have to like lower the volume. Like, somebody's gonna be listening to this on the subway and like
just me screaming in their ear. Good.
It's interesting because when I think about audio, when I first got like an iPod, I listened to nothing but music, and I discovered podcasts, and I don't listen to music anymore.
Right?
It's all podcasts. And so it's interesting to be able to build on that and to do some fiction, which is actually really hard to find.
Yeah.
Except for some people release their novels as audiobooks.
Yeah.
That's not so awesome. In terms of of this play, you were talking about this play being a couple of years old, Jason. How long ago was Hangman written?
It was like 2011, 2012, 2011.
Yeah.
And we talked a bit about the town that's burning for years. Were there other inspirations that went into the play that you recall, or did it all sprout out of that town?
Yeah, I mean, I did this. The way that I sort of write plays in general is that I don't. Basically, it just starts with that image, and then basically it's just voice, like characters speaking. Mm-hmm. So I don't even have any. There are no set characters. I don't have a set story. All I know is that there's this image of this town, and I know that this person gets hanged. And then I started with that, and then the first scene that I wrote was the scene with Braden and Alistair in the jail cell.
Yeah.
So I wrote that scene, and I was like, "Ooh, these guys are juicy. Who are these juicy guys? Tell me more." And then I just wrote it. I literally wrote it like 2 days. Like I wrote it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I had the chance to be at Tarragon, then we slowed it down.
Yeah.
But usually the impulse is just like, man, I basically write as fast as I can.
Yeah.
I don't see the characters just emerge literally just as voices. I don't even know what they look like. And by the time it's done, I have like 50 pages, but there's no names. There's no character names. There's just voices. There isn't even a story. I don't feel until you read it. Oh, there is a story. There was a story the entire time. So that's sort of the process. And then for this play, it was a very similar process. It was driven by the image, and it was driven by these voices and these characters, and they were very vivid to me. So they just couldn't stop talking.
So you're not a planner. You don't like sit down and like plan. You don't do the index card thing. You just sort of sit down.
No.
And
Yeah.
go.
Like the way that it's so funny because like they're like, oh man, you write plays in like a day or 2 days, but no, I wrote the play like for a month in my head or in my body. Like I did this thing when I was at National Theatre School. It was like, I would have like an idea for a scene or a monologue, and I would be like, oh, so stoked to write it down, but I wouldn't, because it was like, if it's that good, you'll remember the scene tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I won't. And so now, for example, I do this thing. I write on my phone, so I'm all like, I write plays on my phone now.
You're like Drake.
I'm like Drake. I am literally. I'm like Drake in terms of my creative process.
The BlackBerry. The BlackBerry is no longer.
Oh my god! And I'm also like I'm also as soft as Drake. I'm baby lotion soft, and it's just like, and I feel like, and it's funny. I'm hanging out, yeah. I know, and it's like, it's true, and I write on my, and it's funny because like I remember I wrote a new trilogy of plays, and it literally is about sort of meeting and just love and relationship and meeting. So I wrote a trilogy of plays, and then the first play of that trilogy, I wrote it on my phone at 3:00 in the morning. But then I only did that because I was thinking about those two forever.
Yeah.
And I'm like on my phone, like I'm in my room on my phone at 3 a.m. and my partner's in bed with me. She's like going, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm
writing a play.
Yeah.
I'm creating art.
Yeah, I'm sliding into some of the people's DMs right now. Like, clearly, what are you doing up? It's 3 a.m. Like, you shouldn't know about my shady activities. But I was writing a play, so it's like, and even though I wrote it really quickly that night, I emailed it to myself. I wrote that play for a while, like a month, 2 months in my body.
Part of me gets, like when you say, I get this idea for a monologue and I don't write it down. Part of me as a writer just gets, because I'm always like, this is an idea and I need to write it down or I could forget it. But it's an interesting thought that like if it's good, you'll remember it.
Absolutely, man. Like I always say, like I do a lot of my writing when I'm either walking around or I'm on the streetcar.
Yeah, that's it.
When I don't have the opportunity to write anything down, because that's when like or do anything else, like when I don't have external stimulus, because that's when I do my thinking. And it'll be an idea that pops up and pops up and pops up. That like
that's it. It's a relentless thought.
Yeah.
What I find for myself is movement helps so much. Like sitting down at a computer with a notebook is only going to get you so far.
Oh boy!
And if you don't get up and move, your mind stays as sedentary as your body.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I get stuck, I'm like, well, gonna be walking for an hour or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. I've become obsessed with Tony Robbins because like he's a fucking genius and I love him, and he has that exact thing where it's like motion motion creates emotion, and get up, and then rev yourself up, and like, you know, don't let fear take hold of you. And I'm as I watch my 9th Tony Robbins video, like at my desk at work, like dying on the inside, I go, man, Tony, you did it again. You did it again. Like, it's so good. It's like fantastic. So I love it.
So I won't ask you what it is, but you're a playwright with a day job, like so many of us are. You have a desk. You said that. Do you find? I don't want to be like, so what do you do for a living? But it's like 'cause I work in tech and I have a desk and I spend 8 hours, sometimes more of the day, like having to think about something that's not what I want to be thinking about. And sometimes I'm okay with it, and sometimes I'm like, fuck.
No, absolutely.
How do you manage the split life of the desk jockey writer?
Well, no, I mean, I have like my desk job is actually pretty fun. Like I work for Now Magazine, so I lead engagement at Now, and my job is to basically go out there and engage the community.
Oh, that's great.
And engage clients, etc. So it's a really fun job. So now all my plays are about me working at Now Magazine. What's your play about, Jay? It's about me having a meeting at Costco. It was phenomenal. The sequel is about me at Leon's, and it's like, holy Jay, like, you know,
Jason Maghanoy's new play now.
Wow. I know, it's called like.
It got 5 M's. It had to.
It had to. It's like, what are you gonna do, Glenn? How can you give me any less?
Yeah.
I see you every Thursday. So it's like
a play about you.
It's a play about you. So it's like, so it's funny because I for me, it's sort of like, you know, how do you build sort of a really fun, just creative life that touches all other aspects of what you do?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you can do that and still feel like you wanna, you know, be creative and write, then that's a really amazing thing. And I do. I still love writing.
Yeah.
That's so important. So it's important that you like enjoy your job, because if your job makes you die inside, it's so hard to. My job doesn't. I want to make sure for my coworkers that might be listening, possibly my boss, I actually really love my job. Just there are days. There are always days. You know there are days. We all have days. Anyway.
No,
now that the cover your ass is done.
No, I cry myself to sleep every night, man. Like, that's just my life in general, man.
It's life.
It's like when you're on the streetcar and you're thinking and you're writing.
Man.
It's like,
it's hard.
It's like, could you imagine like just being on the streetcar and like you're writing Hangman in your head and you're like, oh God, what a bad day for that dude. Like, and now I gotta write it down. Like, that guy had a really bad day.
Oh man,
so it's great.
I'm sorry, Alistair.
I know, it's like, man.
Sorry.
Oh,
I sort of, like, you were talking about writing that play on your phone. See, I'm not a great thumb typer.
Right.
I do not do well. Like, I keep trying to be better typing on my phone, but I think it's a fascinating thing. Like,
touchscreens, man, they're so hard.
But I can't. Like, the touch screen just fucks me up.
I'm the same way, man.
You obviously have some kind of trick that you've learned for the thumb typing.
Oh man, like, you know, I just like, you know, it's like I live on my phone, man. It's like,
do you keep predictive text on when you
when you
play,
when
you turn it off?
It's off, but it gives suggestions.
Right.
But it's funny because, like, you know, it's like, you know, I'll be like working on my play, and then sending a DM, and then sending a mass text, and then sending an email. Like, it's like I'm obsessed with my phone and writing plays and Instagram. Like, it's like it's my home away from home, man.
Yeah, man.
Don't take it away from me.
You're just writing on the notes.
Notes. Yeah, just notes. I just write on notes and then I email it to myself.
That's crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm always like, what app for writing plays? That's actually like why do you need to format it?
Yeah, man.
When you're just writing it, you know?
It's like, I have an app where it's like I speak into it and it writes it down in like in a British accent.
Oh man.
Well, the thing with
Not
the
British.
the writing it, like speaking into it and writing it down, they only have like the ones that I found. It's like you talk for like a minute and then it's like, wait.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
I need to be able to talk for like 5.
I
10
need a
minutes.
secretary.
Just,
I want a robot
dictate.
secretary. That's what I
I
want.
want a
Yeah.
robot secretary so I can just dictate stuff.
Yeah. Siri,
It would
be better.
brilliant. It'd be
Do
brilliant.
better. Oh man.
So Hangman opens
May the 13th.
May the 13th.
It opens on Friday the 13th.
Oh my
You
gosh.
couldn't ask for something better.
Oh,
Right?
so good.
Right?
So good.
That's at the Storefront in Toronto.
Storefront in Toronto, Bloor in Delaware, 955 Bloor Street. Yeah, it's the Storefront has been fostering a very interesting indie scene for the past like 3-4 years, and I'm fortunate enough that they've sort of gotten behind me this year, the Sexy Rex, me doing Sexy Rep was actually accidental. It was because Sexy Rex asked me, but the Storefront has gotten behind me. They have a play that I've written that is going up as part of their playwrights unit.
Oh wow!
They're
Great.
pushing me for this. It's a breeding ground for new ideas, and it's really great what they're doing, and hopefully when Hangman goes up, it proves that.
Guys, this has been great. Are you guys on Twitter?
Yeah.
I'm not on Twitter.
Not on Twitter.
How are you not on Twitter?
So,
I can't be on my phone that much and be on Twitter.
That's fair.
I
Yeah,
would
you
torch my life.
you
I would
explode.
so
Explode.
just Instagram for you.
Yeah, just Instagram.
Now, do you actually have an Instagram account? Do you post, or are you just a lurker?
I post mostly lurk. Yeah, see what? This is the greatest interview ever.
So good.
All my shit's on blast, man. I don't mind, man. It's like
Will you share your Instagram?
yeah, J Maghanoy, Maghanoy.
Yeah.
Right. And on Twitter?
Twitter, I'm at Spoony Dan, SPOONYDAN. It's a nickname that I got in theater school. And on Instagram, I'm at Danquo. Like Banquo, but with a D.
With a D.
Because as much as there are a lot of people out there that say that I hate Shakespeare, I actually love Shakespeare. Yeah.
We should at some
We'll
point
talk about that at some
talk
point.
about both that and Spoony Dan. But this has been great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you
Cheers,
so
no
much.
problem.